The fluorescent lights of St. Mary's Hospital emergency room buzzed overhead, flickering occasionally as if struggling to stay awake just like me. 12 hours into my shift, my scrubs felt like they were made of lead, weighing down my exhausted body as I checked the clock for the 100th time. 30 more minutes until I could collapse into my bed. The ER was mercifully quiet, just the steady rhythm of rain against the windows and the distant beeping of monitors keeping me company. I was updating patient charts at the nurse's station when the automatic doors slid open, letting in a gust of cold air and the scent of rain. A man staggered in, one hand pressed against his side where dark blood seeped between his fingers. The other braced against the wall for support. Despite his obvious pain, he moved with a controlled grace that immediately set off warning bells in my head. He was strikingly handsome, probably in his late 20s, with sharp cheekbones and intense eyes that locked onto mine with unnerving focus. I rushed toward him, professional instincts overriding my exhaustion and the flutter of alarm in my chest. His expensive suit was soaked through, both from rain and blood, and when I reached for him, his free hand caught my wrist with surprising strength. "I need help," he said, his voice low and accented. "No paperwork. No questions. I can pay." As head nurse, I should have called security, should have insisted on proper protocol, but something in those eyes made me hesitate. "I need your name at least," I told him, trying to assess the wound without being too obvious about it. Gunshot wounds required police reports. He seemed to read my thoughts, his jaw tightening. "I don't need paperwork, I need discretion," he growled. Then his expression softened slightly. "Please, just help me." I made a split-second decision I would probably regret. "Follow me," I whispered, guiding him past the main desk to an examination room in the back corner of the ER, one that wasn't monitored by cameras. I could lose my license for this, I thought as I helped him onto the table, but my hands were already reaching for supplies, already falling into the familiar rhythm of emergency care. The metallic scent of blood mixed with antiseptic as I cut away his shirt to reveal a gunshot wound just below his ribcage. Not his first scar, I noted, recognizing the distinctive marks of previous violence across his torso. He watched me work with calculating eyes, never flinching even as I cleaned the wound. "Who are you?" I finally asked, unable to contain my curiosity. For a moment, I thought he wouldn't answer, then his lips curved in the ghost of a smile. "Someone who will remember this kindness, nurse." The way he said it sent a chill down my spine, not entirely from fear. I should have called security. I should have followed protocol. Instead, I reached for a suture kit and prepared to treat a dangerous stranger off the record, crossing a line I never thought I would cross. And now, please stop and subscribe to my channel. Every subscriber brings me closer to 1,000, which helps me keep these stories alive and coming your way. If you're enjoying this video, don't forget to like it and drop a comment telling us where you're watching from. It's always amazing to see how far these tales travel across the world. Now let's continue. The exam room felt smaller with each passing minute, sterile white walls closing in as I gathered supplies with practiced efficiency, while trying to ignore the weight of his gaze following my every movement. My hands remained steady as I prepared the local anesthetic, though my pulse betrayed me, racing beneath my skin as I approached him again. "No local," he said, his accent thickening slightly with pain. "I need to stay alert." I opened my mouth to protest, but something in his expression silenced me. "Fine," I conceded, placing the syringe aside and pulling on fresh gloves with a snap that seemed thunderous in the small space. "I need to extract the bullet before I can close the wound. This will hurt." He merely nodded, jaw tight as I cleaned the entry wound more thoroughly, the metallic tang of blood mixing with antiseptic in the air. Working without anesthetic meant I could assess his reactions, watch for signs of internal damage as I probed the wound with sterile forceps. His breathing remained controlled, muscles tensing beneath my fingers, but not a sound escaping his lips. I located the bullet lodged against his rib, mercifully missing any vital organs, and extracted it with meticulous care, dropping the misshapen metal into a kidney dish with a soft clink. Only then did he speak, his voice a low rumble that I felt more than heard in the quiet room. "Why are you helping me?" he asked, watching me prepare the suture kit with those intense eyes that seemed to see right through me. "Because you're bleeding on my floor," I replied, threading the curved needle with practiced ease. And I took an oath. A ghost of a smile touched his lips, but didn't reach his eyes. Most oaths have exceptions for men like me. I focused on placing the first stitch, uncomfortable with how perceptive his comment was. "I don't know what kind of man you are," I said, though the expensive suit, the controlled pain tolerance, the refusal of paperwork all pointed to something dangerous, something I was deliberately choosing not to acknowledge as I worked. His hand suddenly covered mine, warm and strong, stilling my movement. "The kind who remembers both debts and betrayals with perfect clarity," he said softly. "I will remember this kindness, Nurse Chen." My surname was on my ID badge, but the intimate way he said it sent a shiver down my spine that wasn't entirely fear. I pulled my hand free and continued suturing, 16 neat stitches closing the ragged hole in his side, while questions multiplied in my mind. The quiet intimacy of medical care felt charged with something else in this small room, my fingertips occasionally brushing against his skin as I worked, his eyes never leaving my face. I applied the final bandage and stepped back, suddenly aware of how close we'd been, how completely I'd violated hospital protocol, and how little I regretted it. "All finished," I said, stripping off my gloves. "Now tell me who shot you, and why I shouldn't call the police right now." His expression changed before I heard it. A subtle hardening around his eyes that sent a warning prickling across my skin seconds before the hospital lockdown alarm blared through the speakers. "Code Silver," announced the automated system, "active threat in the building." The man moved with startling speed despite his injury, crossing to the door and engaging the lock before I could process what was happening. He pulled a sleek black phone from his pocket and turned away, speaking rapid Russian in a low, urgent tone. I backed against the counter, the metal edge digging into my spine as the reality of my situation crystallized with terrifying clarity. I was locked in a small exam room with a gunshot victim who clearly wasn't just an innocent bystander. Through the door, I could hear the heavy footfalls of multiple people moving with purpose down the hallway, the crackle of police radios, authoritative voices announcing they were searching for a shooting suspect. My mysterious patient ended his call and turned to face me, his handsome features set in lines of grim determination. The strikingly youthful face that had initially made me estimate him in his late 20s now seemed like a deception, the eyes too knowing, too calculating for someone so young. "Lock the door and don't leave," he told me, his accent thicker now with urgency. "I'm not your enemy, but the men searching for me will kill us both if they find us." The small room that had felt claustrophobic before now became a prison. The single door and narrow window are only exits, both unusable. I could feel my heart hammering against my ribs as adrenaline flooded my system, fight or flight instincts screaming with nowhere to go. "They're police," I whispered. "They don't just kill people." His laugh was soft and entirely without humor. "Not all of them are police. Listen to their footsteps, count the different patterns." I did, suddenly aware that beneath the authoritative voices were other movements. Quieter, more deliberate. The room seemed to shrink further as understanding dawned. My patient moved closer, one hand still pressed against his freshly bandaged wound. "They want something I have, something that will expose corruption reaching to the highest levels of city government. That's why they shot me. If they find me, they will eliminate any witnesses." His eyes locked with mine, intense and unwavering. "That includes the nurse who treated me." I should have been terrified, should have been looking for any way to escape, but something in his direct gaze made me believe him. Outside, the footsteps grew closer, doors opening and closing as they searched room by room. I made a decision that would irrevocably change my life, crossing to the small supply closet and pulling out a crash cart. "Help me barricade the door," I whispered. "Whoever they aren't getting in here." Hours crawled by as we remained barricaded in that small exam room, the hospital lockdown stretching into early morning. I sat on the floor with my back against the wall, knees hugged to my chest, watching my mysterious patient pace the limited space like a caged predator despite his injury. The adrenaline that had sustained me was fading, leaving room for waves of fear, anger, and an unwelcome fascination with the man who had upended my orderly life in the span of a single night. Outside, the search continued, less frantic now but still methodical, room by room, floor by floor. Occasionally would hear voices too close for comfort, and had freeze mid-step, hand instinctively moving toward what I suspected was a concealed weapon. In those moments of shared tension, waiting in breathless silence, I felt strangely connected to him, bound by our mutual need to remain undiscovered. Dawn eventually began filtering through the blinds, casting thin golden stripes across the room that illuminated dust motes dancing in the air and softened the harsh edges of medical equipment into long, stretching shadows. The changing light seemed to trigger something in him, a decision made as he finally settled on the edge of the exam table, his eyes finding mine in the half-light. "My name is Viktor Kozlov," he said quietly, the weight of the confession hanging between us like something tangible. "The Bratva, Russian Mafia, wants me dead because I refuse to let them traffic women through my territory. The police want me because they think I killed 3 of their men tonight. I didn't. But I know who did." I studied his face, the strikingly handsome features now tinged with exhaustion, the controlled pain evident in the tight line of his mouth, trying to reconcile the man before me with the criminal world he described. "You control territory," I said flatly, trying and failing to keep accusation from my voice. "So you're what? Competing mafia." His jaw tightened, a flash of something like hurt crossing his features before disappearing behind careful control. "I control businesses that were my father's, and his before him. What others call territory, I call responsibility. For 3 years, I've been working with federal agents to dismantle trafficking networks using evidence I've gathered. That evidence is what they want. What they shot me to prevent me from delivering." The intimacy of the small room, the shared danger of the past hours, made his confession feel heavier, more significant than it might have in other circumstances. I wanted to disbelieve him, to categorize him neatly as criminal, danger, threat, but the complexity in his eyes as dawn light caught them made such simplicity impossible. "If you're working with federal agents, why run from police?" I asked, still clinging to skepticism even as doubt crept in. "Because 3 of those officers are on Bratva payroll," he replied, his gaze never leaving mine. "The federal operation was compromised. Someone very powerful wants me silenced before I can testify next week, and now you're caught in the middle of it." The distant sounds of the morning shift arriving filtered through our barricaded door, voices calling greetings, the squeak of practical shoes on linoleum, the familiar rhythm of a hospital waking up that had always been comforting until now. Victor tensed, listening intently to the changing patterns outside, his hand unconsciously pressing against the bandaged wound at his side. "We need to move," he said, his voice low and urgent. "Too many people, too many eyes. The risk of discovery increases with every passing minute." I stood, legs stiff from hours on the cold floor, reality crashing back like a physical weight. My shift had ended hours ago. By now they would have noticed my absence, perhaps even connected it to the missing supplies, the locked examination room. In the growing light of morning, my decision to help this man seemed both reckless and inevitable. Victor moved to the window, carefully adjusting the blinds to peer out before turning back to me. his strikingly handsome features set with determination that did nothing to hide the pallor of pain beneath. "I could force you to come with me," he said quietly, surprising me with his directness. "But I won't. I'm asking for your help, Olivia." The use of my first name startled me, though I shouldn't have been surprised he knew it from my badge. "Why me?" I asked, genuinely curious why this powerful, dangerous man would ask rather than demand. His eyes met mine, steady and certain. "Because your hands didn't shake even when you were afraid. I need someone steady for what comes next." A wave of conflicting emotions crashed through me, fear and pride and an unwelcome flutter of something else. Outside, a cart rattled past our door, voices discussing patient rounds, the normal morning routine continuing oblivious to our hidden drama. I was torn between self-preservation and a growing curiosity about Victor's claims, about the evidence he carried, about the corruption he sought to expose. If I left with him, I would be crossing a line I could never uncross, becoming complicit, perhaps even criminal. If I stayed, I risked being discovered by the false police still searching the hospital, risked being eliminated as a witness, risked never knowing the truth. Victor watched me wrestle with the decision, not pushing, not threatening, showing an unexpected patience and consideration for my autonomy that contradicted everything I thought I knew about men like him. He was offering me a choice when he could have simply taken, and that more than anything, tipped my internal scales. "I need to leave a note for my roommate," I said finally, "and change out of these scrubs." The relief that flashed across his face was genuine, softening his features momentarily before he nodded, already planning our escape route. "We have 20 minutes at most before they search this section again," he said. "Tell me what you need." We moved through the hospital like ghosts, Victor guiding me through service corridors I'd never used despite working at St. Mary's for 6 years. He had clearly studied the building layout, anticipating each security camera, each potential encounter with staff. I had changed into spare clothes from my locker, street clothes that would attract less attention than scrubs, and tied my hair back, transforming from nurse to anonymous civilian in minutes. The note I'd left for my roommate was deliberately vague, claiming a family emergency, buying me time before anyone would truly start looking for me. With each step deeper into the service areas of the hospital, I felt the weight of my decision. The shocking reality that I, Olivia Chen, rule follower and dedicated healthcare professional, was actively helping a self-confessed criminal escape while evading law enforcement. Yet beneath the disbelief was an undeniable current of exhilaration, a fierce curiosity about the truth Victor claimed to possess, and most disturbing of all, a growing awareness of him, not just as a dangerous man, but as a strikingly handsome one, whose every movement, despite his injury, conveyed power and precision. We paused at a service entrance to the parking garage. Victor's hand light on my arm as he scanned the area, his body angled slightly to shield me. The garage was dimly lit, concrete pillars creating pools of shadow perfect for concealment or ambush. Victor pulled out his phone, sent a text with one hand, and within seconds a sleek black Audi rolled silently from the lower level, stopping precisely at our position. The driver remained invisible behind tinted windows as the rear door opened automatically. Victor urged me forward with gentle pressure at the small of my back, his vigilance never wavering even as we slipped into the luxurious interior. I sank into buttery leather seats, still trying to process how completely I'd upended my life in the span of hours, how willingly I'd stepped outside the law. The car accelerated smoothly up the ramps and out into early morning rain, joining sparse traffic with practiced anonymity. "Where are we going?" I asked, watching raindrops race across my window, transforming the familiar streets of my city into something alien and uncertain. "Somewhere safe," Victor replied, his voice low and steady, as he finally allowed himself to relax slightly against the seat, one hand still pressed to his bandaged side. "My home, where I can protect you until this is over." I watched the rain-slicked streets passing outside, red taillights smearing into crimson streaks as the car gathered speed, putting distance between us and the hospital, between my old life and whatever waited ahead. The city I had known all my life receded in the rearview mirror, familiar landmarks transformed by rain and my new perspective. Everything simultaneously the same and irrevocably changed. I had crossed a threshold, stepped willingly into Victor's world of danger and shadows, and despite every rational thought screaming caution, I couldn't deny the electric thrill coursing through me, the sense that for the first time in years, I was fully, completely alive. The car wound through lush countryside for nearly an hour before massive iron gates appeared, opening silently as we approached without the driver slowing or signaling. Security cameras swiveled to track our movement, and I glimpsed men with tactical gear patrolling the perimeter, almost invisible among the trees until they moved. The driveway curved through manicured grounds before revealing an imposing stone mansion that looked centuries old, yet somehow timeless, its windows gleaming in the morning light. I felt a strange disconnect, like I'd stepped into another world entirely, one where hospital shifts and student loans and my tiny apartment belonged to someone else's life. Victor sat straighter as we approached, some of the tension visibly leaving his body now that we were on his territory. The car stopped at the base of wide stone steps, and he exited first, scanning the surroundings before extending his hand to help me out. His palm was warm against mine, the unexpected gallantry making me momentarily forget the circumstances of our meeting. Inside, the mansion was a study in contrasts, ancient stone walls housing sleek modern furnishings, priceless art hanging beside state-of-the-art security monitors. The air carried the scent of expensive leather, subtle cologne, and something older, like history itself preserved in stone and wood. I tried not to gape as Victor led me through a soaring entryway into what appeared to be a living area, though it was larger than my entire apartment building. "You're the first outsider to come here in 5 years," he told me, watching my reaction carefully as I took in the casual display of wealth and power surrounding us. "The last one tried to kill me." I turned to him, suddenly aware of how little I truly knew about this strikingly handsome man whose wound I'd treated, whose escape I'd facilitated. "Why do you trust me?" I asked, the question that had been building since he first asked for my help. Victor moved closer, his presence filling my awareness despite the vast room around us. One hand rose to touch the bandage beneath his shirt, a gesture somehow intimate despite its simplicity. "You saved my life when you could have called the police. That means something to me." In the clear morning light streaming through towering windows, I could better see the dichotomy of him, the youthful handsomeness of his features, contradicted by eyes that had seen too much, the casual grace of his movements belying the deadly capability I had witnessed. A man appeared silently in a doorway, older, with watchful eyes that assessed me thoroughly before addressing Victor in rapid Russian. Victor responded calmly, then turned back to me. "I need to handle something. Elena will show you to your room. You should rest. We have much to discuss later." As he walked away, I realized how completely I'd entered his world, surrounded by his wealth, his security, his mysteries, and found myself both terrified and strangely exhilarated by what might come next. The day passed in a blur of luxury and surreality, my body finally demanding rest after the adrenaline crash. I woke as evening shadows stretched across my room, disoriented until memories of the previous night flooded back. A knock at my door revealed a young woman who informed me Victor requested my company in his study when I was ready. I followed her through corridors lined with artwork that belonged in museums, acutely aware of both the security personnel discreetly positioned throughout the mansion and my own disheveled appearance compared to the opulence surrounding me. The study door stood open, revealing a space that seemed to embody Victor himself, power and refinement coexisting in perfect balance. Floor-to-ceiling bookshelves lined with leather-bound volumes framed a massive fireplace where flames cast dancing light across Persian rugs and antique furniture. Victor stood as I entered, the firelight softening his strikingly handsome features, making him appear even younger than I had initially thought. He gestured to a leather chair opposite his own, a small table between them bearing a crystal decanter and 2 glasses of amber liquid. I sat, hyper-aware of the intimacy of the setting, the mansion silent around us as if holding its breath. Victor leaned forward, firelight catching in his eyes as he began speaking of corruption extending to the highest levels of city government, of police captains on cartel payrolls, of judges and district attorneys compromised by Russian Mafia connections. He spoke of women trafficked through port authorities who looked the other way, of evidence he had gathered over years, evidence that would bring down powerful men if he could get it into federal hands. I realized as he spoke that I had crossed a point of no return the moment I had treated his wound without reporting it, that I was already entangled in his dangerous world, whether I chose to acknowledge it or not. What was more disturbing was the unexpected attraction I felt as he spoke with passion about justice and accountability. This complex man who operated outside the law, yet seemed driven by a moral code as rigid as my own. "I need a week of your time," he said, his eyes never leaving mine. "Help me expose who is really behind these killings, and I'll make sure you never have to worry about anything again. My nursing license, my apartment, my student loans, all the mundane concerns of my former life flashed through my mind." "What happens if I refuse?" I asked, surprised by the steadiness of my own voice. His expression softened, vulnerability showing briefly beneath the controlled exterior. "Then I'll have my men take you home with my gratitude and protection. But I think you're curious, and I think you know I'm telling the truth." As the fire crackled in the hearth, casting our shadows against ancient stones that had witnessed centuries of secrets, I realized the truth in his words. I was curious, drawn to both the mystery and the man before me, standing at the edge of a decision that would irrevocably change the course of my life.